Hi, my name is Dieprie. That's Diepriye. I want to talk a little bit about what's in a name. It's quite fraught when you live in a multicultural society and um, you have names that perhaps many of the people around you are unfamiliar with. A few years ago, I made a video called Say My Name, kind of riffing off of Destiny's Child, Say My Name, Say My Name. And in it, I expressed a lot of the frustration that people in the Western society, like me, who have non-Western names, often feel when you have a name that people are unfamiliar with. And it has to deal with, I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience, but some of it is it has to deal with how people respond to difference. And so when you have a name that people are unfamiliar with, you get to see a lot about how people respond to difference. So I began this video by saying, hello, my name is Dieprie. And just off the bat, there are some people who they hear it and they say, oh, Dieprie. And there are some people who, at the other extreme, who simply cannot say those syllables in that combination. And it's interesting because it's kind of an experience that you have over and over and over and over again in your lifetime, because you are constantly meeting people from in school, meeting all your classmates, meeting the teacher, you're just interacting with different people in your social life and your work life. And so, let's see, my first grade teacher for an entire year called me Dieprie, could not say my name. My second grade teacher, during the first week, she decided to give me a nickname, my initials, DK. And for 8 years, that stuck. People in my school, and it just spilled over into my environment because it just became easier. Just call me DK. Because people always ask, do you have a nickname? That's another response that people have. Do you have a nickname? As opposed to simply trying to say Dieprie. So I went around as DK for a long time, which I liked. People laughed at that sometimes, Steve DK, but it was all in good fun. I wasn't the kind of person that was teased a lot behind my name in my own school, but outside of school and anytime I had to meet new kids, just to look at my name, people were like, oh, what's that? My last name is Kuku, K-U-K-U. It's in the English language. There are not many ways that you could pronounce K-U-K-U. So I'm always baffled when people are like, how do you say this? As if they are hesitant to call someone cuckoo or say cuckoo because perhaps it has an interesting connotation in English. So again, you are forced to sort of see human nature in its rawest form, to catch people off guard and see what their knee-jerk reaction is to difference. And what that teaches you, or many things in multicultural society, what it teaches you is empathy, because you, in a sense, have to learn to teach people how to say your name. And that constantly having to be in a position to teach people. But the failsafe is it's not like you're always in charge, but it's in a sense it's always an exchange kind of teacher. So you really sort of train yourself to understand other people. That's something that's key, because I sometimes forget that a lot of other people around me don't necessarily encounter people who are different from them or have a name that's different from theirs, or people may spend most of the time in the same race, culture, language group, segregated. And as someone who has a different name and recognizably African name, people often can understand that it's not like one of the, I don't want to say trendier, but a style of names that African Americans have adopted since the 70s and 80s to sort of create something, an alternative identity than the one that the society gave to us. So people just didn't want to have a so-called Christian name. So you would get what people make fun of, Latifah, Lafette, La this, La that, Shaniqua, Shanae, Shakay, all those creative names that people sort of laugh at and see as black and working class. But I have no problem with that, because I understand that people really want to define themselves outside of what the society that gave them a very ugly, that that painted them black in a very real sense. Um, but my name is also stands out from those names because it is, um, I would guess I have to say, an authentic, genuine African name. In fact, I have a little cousin who has the same name, spells it differently. He has classmates who have the name in the region where I come from. It's a common name, and people who know that part of Nigeria would immediately identify Diakre. Oh, that's a river's name, and people who might know would know specifically the kind of area that it's from. But that, of course, isn't the case in America. And so you oscillate between people who are extremely familiar with you and people who look at you like an alien. Now, the question is, what do you do with that? Because some people actually avoid even interacting with you because they just don't know how to say your name, and that uncertainty creates such a discomfort in them that they actually avoid you. I mean, you actually, and you can see this in people's sort of discomfort and unease around you, and that's also very telling about human nature. Now, I said you develop some qualities around this, and one of them is empathy. Another one could be arrogance, as you can see, because you almost, in a sense, are always put in a position to have to manipulate people, have to sort of guide them through this experience of how do you encounter someone who, is different from you, or you assume is different because they have this name that identifies them as all these things that you imagine that may or may not have anything to do with that person. Like I said, I have an African name, so people then start to project their ideas about Africa onto me, and so they ask you all kinds of questions, leading questions about what their images of Africa are. I won't get sort of into those, but I do appreciate the fact that people, at least in their own way, are opening themselves up to experiencing someone who they assume has such a different life experience than they do. It's funny because, okay, like, I come from Louisville, Kentucky. Like, I'm from the heartland of America. Like, so growing up in the heartland and having people in the heartland like, where are you from? Well, I'm from down the street. I mean, again, it's very telling about the human experience, but what it ultimately says is that there are far too few of us on the planet who genuinely interact with people who are different from us. And you see this all the time because in our pop culture that plays to stereotypes, including the stereotype about those names, those creative African American names, you play to a base level of knowledge about one another, and people get to think that they know about each other and in our society, and yet we know so little. I think the Obama campaign, the original, and the first presidency really showed us a lot about how divided we are as a society. I mean, I wasn't surprised to see, a radical right wing and even gun violence increase in America because people, because of the base level of discomfort that I see with difference, even amongst people that I'm forced to interact with who just can't deal with me because my name is different. So when you're naming your child, sure, you should consider all of this. I've spoken with new parents, first-time parents about, what do you give, what do you give your child if not the gift of a name that will draw people to them, that will help them be a social being. And having a name that's, for me, having a name that's different, but also one that reflects my cultural heritage, one that reminds me every time I hear it that I come from a group of people and I'm not just sort of out here on my own. My name says all those things to me, and it gives me a kind of confidence so that when I walk about the world, I don't feel so disconnected. And that's the last thing that I like to say, is that having this name that connects me, and that I have to sort of constantly explain to other people, also connects them. And when I say that people assume that I'm so different from them, well, having such a different name also reminds me, more than other people, I would say, that I'm actually not so different. I'm just another guy. I'm living my life. I'm, experience joy and sadness and euphoria and sorrow, all, and everything in between. I don't see myself as different from other people as just in the process of getting to know each other's names has shown me that other people see me, and that's also what's interesting, and it inspires my life's work, like on these videos, to just continue to talk and connect with people. In another video, I'll talk about the comments on YouTube as a means of communicating and talking with a sense of anonymity, all tied to a name.